Oh my gosh. I really like this setup. I think this might be better. I don't know. I don't know if this is too bright. Whatever. It's really late. Okay. I know I'm trying to do this Vlogmas thing where I'm trying to do a video every day, but I procrastinated this one. I'll never do it again. So I filmed this whole video script with one of these dinky little mics, okay? One of these. And I guess like it might have been just like where I clipped it, okay? But like all I could hear was my hair, and I was trying to edit this for like 15 minutes just now, and I was like losing my mind. So I'm redoing this. Please have grace. I'm sorry. I know I'm late, okay? No one cares. This was literally just like only my rules. I made these up. I'm dumb. Okay, enjoy the video. Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Nicole Curbs, and I like to talk about what I like to watch and what I like to read. So this is day 2 of my Vlogmas adventure. It's a little late, I'm sorry. Today, I wanted to talk about my favorite shows that came out in 2023. So just as a disclaimer, these are all the shows that premiered this year that I was able to see from start to finish, meaning the season 1 of this series came out in 2023. I'll talk about a few longer running shows that had a new season come out this past year, maybe in a different video. There's still so many great shows that came out this year that I haven't had a chance to watch. So if there's a show that I missed that you're absolutely obsessed with, please tell me in the comments below. I will definitely make sure to add it to my watch list. I figure that I'm gonna go roughly in chronological order for the year to jog all of our collective memory, okay? So The Last of Us premiered in January 2023 on HBO. The game released in 2013 and has been a cult favorite ever since. I personally played it only one time because that's all that my heart could take. And then I played the sequel right after in 2020. Also only one time because I am fragile. So if you're not familiar with the story of The Last of Us, the story follows Joel as he moves through a world that has been ravaged by a pandemic that was caused by like a fungal infection. Which, by the way, playing both games in the year 2020 was a trip, okay? This fungal infestation causes the infected to become carnivorous zombies that essentially bring the world to its knees. 20 years later, 20 years of this apocalyptic new world, Joel is tasked with taking Ellie, a young girl who's allegedly immune to the bites of the infected, across the country in hopes of producing a cure. Starring the one and only Pedro Pascal as Joel and Bella Ramsey as Ellie, The Last of Us was a thoroughly faithful adaptation of the beloved game with amazing performances by so many different actors. Some standout performances that come to mind for me are going to be Melanie Lynskey, you might know from Yellow Jackets. She plays Resistance leader Kathleen, who's quite ruthless. Lamar Johnson and Kayvon Montreal Woodard as Henry and Sam. And of course, Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett as Bill and Frank, whose love story was as beautiful as it was tragic. I don't think I have sobbed harder this year, I'm telling you. I would argue that I preferred the way that Bill and Frank's story played out in the show versus in the game. I felt like it was kind of an afterthought in the game, or it just wasn't as like fully fleshed out, I guess. What this show does so well, and it reminds me a lot of something The Walking Dead focused on very heavily in its early seasons, is it demonstrates the lengths that people will go to protect the ones that they love. Zombie films have historically been a commentary on society. Whereas like The Last of Us, I feel like focuses more on building complex and compelling relationships between its survivors. Also historically, video game adaptations into film and or television has been kind of lackluster. I would say some exceptions include The Witcher and also for me, Mortal Kombat. I know it's cheesy, don't hate me, I'm obsessed. But The Last of Us knocked it out of the park. If you haven't watched this or played it, I highly recommend you do both. You have plenty of time too, because season 2 isn't set to start filming until summer of 2024. Okay, so my next pick is Kunk on Earth. I know, it's a weird turn from Last of Us to Kunk on Earth, okay? But hear me out. After weeping like a baby through all of The Last of Us, I needed a little bit of a pick-me-up, okay? And Philomena Kunk is exactly what I needed when I was in my feelings. So initially airing in the UK in September 2022, Kunk on Earth premiered on Netflix in the US in 2023. And this mockumentary stars Diane Morgan as Philomena Kunk. She's an investigative reporter who is traveling the world interviewing historians and archaeologists and experts in their field about our planet and our history. Her deadpan delivery, coupled with these academic experts trying so hard to keep a straight face through these ridiculous interview questions, it makes for such fun, lighthearted, cozy viewing. Diane Morgan's performance as Philomena Kunk is delivered so earnestly that I genuinely thought that this was a real person for the first couple episodes. Like, I know she's a real it's a real person. I just thought that, Philomena Kunk was a real, character. However, she's not. She's a character that was created by Diane Morgan, first introduced on Charlie Brooker's Weekly White back in the mid-2010s. She then went on to do Kunk on Christmas in 2016 and then Kunk on Britain in 2018. Her performance on Kunk on Earth earned her a nomination for BAFTA's Best Female Comedy Performance. So if you're looking for lighthearted mockumentaries about the history of our world, please check this one out. It's phenomenal. Dude. The Consultant. Okay, The Consultant premiered on Prime Video in February of 2023. This one stars Christoph Waltz, Nat Wolff, and Brittany O'Grady. The Consultant basically follows two coworkers at a high-profile gaming company started by this young gaming prodigy. This gaming company is suddenly taken over by a mysterious workplace consultant after the owner is suddenly killed. This series took me completely by surprise. I hadn't seen it coming, I hadn't read anything about it, and I was just hooked immediately because it takes off right from the first episode. It just doesn't stop. The pacing, the outstanding performances of Christoph Waltz as this eccentric and unhinged consultant just really makes this series unlike any other show out there. It explores themes of tech culture and corporate greed and what people will do to succeed. I didn't mean that to rhyme. While the ending goes a little off the rails, I really, really enjoyed this series. I highly recommend you check it out. It's based on a book, by the way, and I found out the author is from Fullerton, California, where I grew up. Small world. Also, you might want to think twice before slandering Beyonce or Taylor Swift, okay? Swarm, created by Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors, is an intense series about superfan Dre and her obsession with fictitious pop star Nyjah. There's a lot of parallels between Nyjah and Beyonce, who, has a fiercely protective fan base called the Beehive. Swarm, Beehive, get it? We got it? Okay. Shot on 16mm film, this is just beautifully shot. I think that the cinematic look and feel of the series is a really cool contrast with the insane events that happen throughout the series. Dre's slow descent into madness is a harrowing ride, but I promise you it is never boring. We see Dre follow Nyjah across the country on a world tour, while meeting all kinds of new people from different walks of life, but she's ultimately refusing to let anybody get in the way of her seeing Nyjah. The series has a handful of surprising cameos, including Paris Jackson and Billie Eilish, in her first acting role, no less. Another fun fact, I found out that this show has a lot of inspiration from real life events. Each episode's wild story is inspired by something that really happened. Think about that the next time that you want to tell someone you think Beyonce's overrated, okay? A24's Beef premiered on Netflix in April of 2023, starring Steven Yeun and Ali Wong as two everyday people who are forever changed by just the quickest flash of road rage. This was another one of those shows that kind of completely took me by surprise. I didn't know what to expect. I'd read a little bit about it, but it's one of those that just grips you by the throat and does not let you go until the very end. What I loved most about the series was the clear divide between Steven Yeun's character and Ali Wong's character. You know, Steven's this working class guy, down and out on his luck, trying to find a way to bring his family home from Korea, while Allie's character is this high profile, affluent, high earning, like business owner with a loving husband and an adorable daughter. She's rubbing elbows with like the movers and shakers of LA. And while both characters are on total opposite ends of the economic spectrum, both of them are like profoundly unhappy. That is like where they meet in the Venn diagram, you know? And they just have no real means of expressing it. This is A24's first series ever produced, and it performed insanely well. It has a 98% on Rotten Tomatoes. Another thing I thought was really cool about this series is that the cast is predominantly Asian. As an Asian American, it is an infuriating trope that Asian actors are relegated to being supportive side characters in most of TV and movies. But Beef feels like a welcome change when it comes to diversity and representation, a positive step in a direction that, you know, seems optimistic. So the relationship between Steven Yeun and Ali Wong's characters, it really has a lot of dramatic ebbs and flows. Each recurring character has deeper flaws the more time you spend with them. But that's what makes these characters feel so genuine, so authentic, you know? It doesn't matter what's in your bank account. We all have bubbling rage just beneath the surface. So just don't drive like an asshole, I think. I think that's the moral of the story. The Diplomat. Okay, so also released in April 2023, The Diplomat follows a political power couple named Kate and Hal Weiler as Kate navigates a new position in the United Kingdom. While political dramas are kind of a dime a dozen, this one stood out to me mainly because the main character is the wife, is Kate. Typically in political dramas, especially are centered around a power couple, the trajectory of the power couple's career is driven primarily by the husband's career, not the wife. So it usually ends up being a conflict at some point when the wife wants a career too. Another reason I enjoyed this series is because of the performances of Kerry Russell and Rufus Sewell. Their relationship dynamic is very tense, and you see them try to set this aside when they're in crisis. But you also see this become extremely difficult when their individual political careers are at odds with each other. And that's what's also interesting. Their tumultuous relationship can be, you know, very valuable when it's working, but also those weak points, you know, that can be a very valuable in with their political enemies. Definitely give this one a watch if you're in the mood for a political drama that doesn't kind of feel like all the rest of them. All right, I have to mention Jury Duty, okay? Released in April of 2023 as well on Freevee, which I think is a weird streaming service, but okay. Jury Duty follows a regular guy reporting for jury duty, surrounded by nothing but actors conducting a fake trial and deliberation. This lone juror takes all of this with so much more composure than I could have, as things just go further and further like off the rails. I think a lot of this was improvised, which like I think is hilarious and amazing. Also, James Marsden is in it as himself, and he is just a gem. He's so cute. Okay, next up we have Hijack, starring Idris Elba, released on Apple TV in June of this year. Hijack follows Idris Elba as he boards a plane to London that is, unfortunately, hijacked by an international terrorist group. As things continue to escalate and also things inevitably go wrong, Idris Elba has to apply his skills as a cutthroat negotiator in order to survive, you know, the flight. Typically, when shows primarily take place in confined spaces, also like for a limited space of time, like the course of a single flight or, you know, a night, I worry that the tension will peter out by episode 3. However, this series kind of has you on the edge of your seat the whole time as you're watching all of these characters try and fail to be the hero, try and fail to communicate with the other, you know, with ground control. And you see the terrorists start to unravel as their plans go horribly wrong. It's definitely a great show if you're a fan of thrillers, especially if those thrillers are British. I Am a Virgo, released on Prime Video in June of this year. It's a heartwarming and hilarious coming-of-age story about a 13-foot tall man named Cootie who grew up safely behind the walls of his parents' home in Oakland. And he eventually breaks out and sees the world his parents have been trying to protect him from for his entire life. It's very cute. You watch him, you know, find friends, fall in love, and ultimately try to find his place in the world. This imaginative world also includes a hilarious vigilante named The Hero, which is very eccentric and quirky, who Cootie idolizes. However, once Cootie's out in the real world, he realizes that the hero's idea of right and wrong seems a little wrong. This story deals a lot with themes of like racial injustice, income inequality, corporate greed, police brutality, and all in a way that is engaging and unique. I think this show handles those themes beautifully with a lot of care, and the cast just give like super strong performances. Another thing I think is really cool about the production of this show is that most of it was filmed using forced camera perspective and puppets instead of opting for CGI. This route obviously would involve a lot more labor, maybe a lot more legwork. It might be a bit more expensive as well, but it just gives, you know, these visual effects a much more like authentic look and feel. You know, your main character's 13 feet tall. Like, creating optical illusions like that just doesn't happen anymore. CGI is everybody's like way to go. So I thought that was fun that they didn't. Boots Riley is one of my favorite contemporary directors. If you like I'm a Virgo, you should also definitely watch Sorry to Bother You. It's a trip. I don't say this lightly, okay? But Deadlock is by far my favorite TV show I found this year. This dark comedy crime mystery was released on Prime Video in June of this year. Set in the small town of Deadlock in Tasmania, the whole community is turned upside down when a dead man's body washes up on shore. Senior Sergeant Dulcie Collins leads the investigation and is reluctantly partnered up with the eccentric and hilarious Eddie Redcliffe from Darwin, Northern Australia. The odd couple dynamic of the rational straight man Dulcie and eccentric and obnoxious Eddie is amazing to watch. They have phenomenal banter. It's so quick-witted. The writing's phenomenal. And their comedic timing is just spot on. Another thing I love about the show is the richly written recurring characters. The community is predominantly female and predominantly LGBTQ. Dulcie is actually married to a woman. There's also several male supporting characters who range from mildly supportive of the women in the community to outwardly misogynistic alpha males. This series deals with a lot of themes of community, acceptance, belonging, finding your place, also work-life balance, and really paying attention to the relationships in your life instead of being married to work. I highly recommend it if you're looking for a new show to binge, and if you ignore every other show and only watch one tonight, it really needs to be this one. Another amazing show that came out on Prime Video this year is The Horrors of Dolores Roach. I'm saying it slow because I'm going to say it a lot in a second, and I'm sorry about it, okay? Released on Prime Video this July, The Horrors of Dolores Roach opens with the premiere of a play called The Horrors of Dolores Roach, which sensationalizes the crimes of its titular character, Dolores Roach. The lead actress who plays Dolores in the play is cornered by the real Dolores in her dressing room, where real Dolores tells her side of the story to the actress playing Dolores. We're taken through a series of events that take place in an empanada shop based in Washington Heights. 16 years ago, Dolores was arrested and imprisoned for possession of marijuana. When she's released, she finds her neighborhood is nothing like what it used to be, and she feels totally out of place. Fortunately, she is taken in by a neighbor who used to have a little crush on her back in the day, who happens to run an empanada shop. I will not spoil the rest, but the performances of Justina Machado and Alejandro Hernandez are just so good. Oh, here's a fun fact that I found on my Wikipedia rabbit hole while watching the show. So there's a recurring character in the series who's in the process of producing a podcast about Dolores as the story unfolds. And the play in the series is based on his podcast. So in real life, this series is based on a one-woman play called Empanada Loca, which was then adapted into a podcast called The Horrors of Dolores Roach. I think produced by Gimlet. The podcast showrunner, Aaron Mark, was a co-creator on the TV series, The Horrors of Dolores Roach. So that character is like a little version of him. I thought it was very meta and cute. The series was produced by Blumhouse Television, but unfortunately it was canceled after only 1 season, which is annoying because there's like a cliffhanger at the end. So I guess I just have to like listen to the podcast for closure. Rounding out my list is Fall of the House of Usher by Mike Flanagan. So this is his last series with Netflix, but man, it packs a punch. Okay, so it's inspired by the works of Edgar Allan Poe, and Fall of the House of Usher centers around the Usher family and their painkiller empire. However, each of the Usher children have been killed brutally, and it is up to Roderick Usher, the head of the household, to ultimately recount the events that led up to each of his children's deaths. He tells all of this to longtime rival Dupin, who has been trying to pin the Usher family for all the wrongful deaths and crimes caused by their drugs and their antics. While I feel like the first episode starts out a little bit slow, the story ramps up really quickly after episode 1. Each of the Usher children is given kind of their own episode where you get to kind of watch their downfall. And what I love most about this series is that as Roderick is kind of telling the stories of each child's death, the ghost of whichever child he's talking about is like in the room with them as he's telling it, but it's not like them like normal, it's like them, their corpse, like it's brutal. Flanagan has always been such a skilled like storyteller, especially when it comes to horror, and he does a phenomenal job with lining up the scares. He doesn't rely on jump scares really heavy like a lot of other filmmakers, which just, he's just amazing. Another key element to Flanagan's works is that, you know, he tends to work with the same kind of merry band of actors in each of his shows or movies, a lot like Ryan Murphy with his American Horror Story troupe. Because their performances are just insane. It feels like these actors really understand his vision and can carry it out beautifully, and he knows exactly how to connect with those actors to give them the direction that they need. This series kind of feels like a darker take on Succession and other stories of wealth, Corn, which I feel like are really trending at the moment. I think society has always had a little bit of a fixation with the ultra wealthy, but in the Fall of the House of Usher, the ultra wealthy are also ultra awful people. They're cutthroat, they're frauds, they're murderous, they're self-centered. And each of their deaths are brought on by like their own vices or their own actions or choices, you know? It's really a satisfying story to see them kind of get what's coming to them in a way, but it really also begs the question, you know, what are you willing to sacrifice for power and influence? This series also had a little bit of a scandal during production, if I remember correctly. I read about it as, you know, as it happened, I think. About 4 months into production, Frank Langella at the time was cast as Roderick Usher, but he was fired from the set after a misconduct investigation, which was kind of vague, which is concerning. Langella was recast with Bruce Greenwood taking on the role. I think he did a phenomenal job, by the way, so I feel like it all kind of worked out. Okay, so that about rounds out my list of 2023's best shows. Okay, so have you seen any of these shows? What are your thoughts? Am I missing your favorite show? Let me know. Otherwise, I will see you tomorrow. Thank you for watching this. I'm so tired.